Welcome, everybody. It's yet another community of practice meeting, yet another Monday night in February, and this is something I really look forward to, is kind of a gathering of folks, out in your communities doing the really hard work of climate action. And we really want a chance to create a space for you to kind of come together to share and get, ask questions, hear some presentations, get support, and share your questions. So I'm Nathan Scott. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Executive Director of Mass Energize. We have with us other members of Mass Energize. So Kat is going to be running kind of tech for us, and Ellen is going to be kind of monitoring the chat, but all of us will be kind of joining in the conversation later. Feel free to use the chat if you have questions. We are going to be having a few speakers this evening, and I'll introduce them a little bit later. But again, this is really your forum. This is not just a passive place, but this is we want this to be an active community. So raise your questions if you want. Raise your hand either remotely or in real time. Put questions in the chat, and as much as possible, we're going to get to have a lively discussion once we kind of hear from our presenters. So the topic tonight was generated at our last meeting, where we heard several of you raise questions and concerns just about how some of our residents in our communities, and many of our residents, how all of us are addressing or are feeling about and experiencing kind of the rising energy costs. So we thought this would be a really good topic to really get into thinking about how we as community leaders can support residents who are having a hard time. And we do know that there are many obstacles to decarbonizing, one of which is the cost of some of the actions that are required. And so as much as possible, we want to help to ameliorate those, the issues that people face. And cost being a large one. So tonight's topic is really kind of how to support our lower income residents on the path to decarbonization. And there are lots of programs, and some of our speakers tonight are going to talk about what they're doing in their communities, and we'd love to hear from all of you what you are doing in your communities. What I'd love to do now is just move into hearing from some of our presenters. So the first presenter is Karen Root-Watkins from Acton, and she's going to be sharing a little bit about what they're doing in Acton to support lower income residents. Karen.
Okay, just going to share my screen. So so I'm Karen Root-Watkins. Can you guys see the screen all right?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Energize Acton was really one of the projects that was born out of the emergency climate declaration, which was passed at town meeting in Acton in 2020. And being aware of how transitioning from fossil fuels affects people with fewer resources was a big part of the emergency climate declaration. And so, the whole idea that a sustainable future should accrue to all and people shouldn't be left out. So when we started designing Energize Acton, we followed Framingham's example, and we had an action about renters saving money. And as we look at retrofitting, we're really looking at multifamily settings as well. Fran Cummings, who's been a part of this group for a long time, he's a real mover and shaker on this, so we really appreciate his efforts. Another group that was born out of the Emergency Climate Declaration was Housing and Climate Justice for Acton, or HCJA, which kind of originated out of one of our partners on the Climate Emergency Declaration, which was Climate Mobilization. And HCJA came in and did a lot of canvassing, a lot of activism. One topic that was raised a lot was the topic of energy bills, and this was in 2021, and it's only become more acute. There was also a lot about EV charging for people in multifamily buildings. And then this year, HCJA applied to Mass Save for the Environmental Justice Outreach Grant, which actually is partly due to you all, because you told Energize Acton about the outreach grant and we passed on the word to HCJA. And this flyer was one outcome. We tried to, I guess, do what Colin, you all have been doing, is trying to gather resources for people. And so this flyer was one outcome, and the goal was, first of all, to connect income eligible people to fuel assistance, to try to connect as many people as possible in the community to Mass Save and to All in Energy, which the town of Acton has a contract with. And it was a really interesting process. We got a lot of input from town offices, from All in Energy, a lot of discussion within Energize Acton, and Housing and Climate Justice for Acton was a part of the process the whole way through. And there was also, so that was a really good part of the process. What we've done about 3 tabling events in outside of grocery stores, and the response has been really positive from people. And it's also interesting that the most in-depth conversations are actually coming from people who want to look at the long-term answers and how to transition off of fossil fuels. The challenges with this part of the process is, first of all, getting the word out to people. HCJA is hoping to do more canvassing in buildings. And then the whole question of follow-up, like, do we know if when people call these organizations, they're having any success? And related to that, we found out really quickly that even though HCJA got a grant for $8,000 from Mass Save to do environmental justice outreach to renters, it turns out that Mass Save doesn't serve renters in buildings with 5 units or more, which is, we have about 30% of our population in Acton is renters, and a large number of them live in big buildings. So basically they're not served by Mass Save, and All in Energy can do energy bill checkups for them, but it can't really connect them to Mass Save. So that's a challenge with the process. And I'll talk about that a little bit more with the next slide. Yeah, one other thing that happened with the news, the resource sheet that was really interesting is that the town was giving us feedback on this process. The town manager was giving us feedback. And then in the end, he decided not to support this resource because he said too many people were involved. And I think it's because HCJA often is very assertive at town meeting and at select board meetings. So anyhow, that was an interesting dynamic, that they were so involved in the process and then backed out of that flyer in the end. However, the town did support the energy cost resource fair. And again, the goal with that was to help eligible people get fuel assistance, to introduce the energy bill checkup idea to people, and to look at long-term alternatives to fossil fuels. And the groups that participated were the Acton Council on Aging, the Acton Community Resources Office, Energize Acton. All in Energy was there to talk about the energy bill checkups and also about Mass Save. Green Acton was there as sort of a spokesperson for Acton Power Choice Green, our aggregated electricity. And then the new Acton Clean Energy coaches were there. So it was an interesting process because the town supported the fair, but the town manager told us when we could do it, what day we could do it, what time we could do it, and where we could do it. It was held at our senior center, which is in the far southeastern corner of Acton. If you walk about 8 yards, you're in Sudbury. It was right at dinner time. So that was an interesting dynamic. So the challenges were we ended up with low turnout, and it wasn't because we failed to advertise. Getting the word out here is really difficult. We don't have any town newspaper anymore. Maybe the turnout was low because of time and place with that dinner slot and a location that wasn't central. And I think there was support from the town, but I think also the social workers involved, it was a very different format from that for them. So they might have felt a little bit uncomfortable with it. And another challenge was, if you want to help people who are at the lower income spectrum, at least when you're talking about renters, you really have to get the landlords involved. But on the positive side, amongst the organizations that were present, there was an amazing exchange of information. And I think people felt really charged and really positive. I did some interviews during the process, and it was actually a little bit hard to hear people because so many people were talking in the background. So that was one good takeaway. We also did have support for this from the town manager, although he didn't want the housing group involved, unfortunately. And we got really good support from the sustainability office and also from the natural resources office, really good guy there. And so even though we only had about 25 people come to the event, it didn't feel like a failure. It felt like a starting point, and like a good starting point, like this is something we can build on. So as we look to the future, we're thinking this is really the kind of event we should plan for mid-autumn as people are thinking about the coming heating season. Try to plan it in a more central location, not during the dinner hour, and maybe try to connect with other broader town events like the Oktoberfest. And then somewhat a different topic, but really tied to this is that we have to look at the outreach grant and at Energize Acton's own work in terms of how we can start to build some alliances with landlords. It's very tricky because I don't think there's a single apartment complex in Acton that's owned locally. They're all management companies from out of town. But really the process of weatherization and really looking at transitioning off of fossil fuels, at least for that segment of our community, it has to come through the landlords. So that's our next big challenge. And I am going to stop there.
Great. Thank you very much, Karen. That was a fascinating presentation. Do we have any questions? I think what we'll do is we'll just take like 2 minutes. We're going to have a broader discussion later, but are there any specific questions for Karen about what they were able to do in Acton?
Hi, yes, this is KJ, also from Acton, and Karen did a great job kind of leading this initiative. And we believe that beyond the people who came, there was a lot of awareness generated, that there was resource out there. So it's kind of that social communications. It really was widely publicized. And also, we do have a grant coming up. It's an ARPA grant, $2,000 per business or multifamily property owner. And this is for retrofits that have been identified through the Mass Save audit. So that's kind of interesting to see, maybe even the trickle down, if landlords can start making some energy and improvements there, that might actually help the residents. So that's our hope. So that's kind of a side comment to Karen's multifamily comment at the end there.
Great, great. Okay, yeah, and I see that Susan Olshoff, and Susan, would you mind just putting also which community you're from? I mean, maybe you could just put it in your.
Yeah, I'm working in Springfield, West Springfield, and Pittsfield as part of the Community First Partnership Program.
Okay,
I grew up in Pittsfield.
Oh, cool. And one thing that was said was something about units that are larger than the 4 units, that Mass Save doesn't serve them. I'm not sure that's true. I think it's just served by a completely different wing of Mass Save. So don't write them off, but
It's served by, it's served by Lean, which is the multifamily organization, but it has to go through the landlords.
Right.
So they can't.
So Karen, I'm happy. I actually helped set that program up for the state, so I'm happy to talk offline about the multifamily. But there is utility money statewide for multifamily 5+, but it doesn't go through the same system and the same vendors. But there are for affordable housing, there are incredibly rich resources to support landlords. So,
okay, and Martha, you had your hand up, but maybe you took it down. Did
Ellen addressed it. I had there is a robust program for 5+ unit buildings, and we've successfully worked with condo associations or property managers or whatever. But I think the great case studies and examples are few and far between. But
yeah, I mean, I think on the affordable housing side, there are actually more examples than on the market rate. So Karen, happy to try and help you with that. There have been lots of landlords, property owners that have had tremendous success with that program.
That sounds great.
Including our housing authority. So
Good. Okay. Well, thank you. We're gonna move on, but again, these are common topics that we can discuss kind of a little bit later on in the presentation. Okay. So our next speakers are from Cape Ann Climate Coalition. We've got Lisa Smith and Susan Hogue.
Thank you for having us. I'm here with, I'm Lisa Smith and I'm here with Susan Hogue. We're both from the Cape Ann Climate Coalition. And the Cape Ann Climate Coalition is doing work on the climate on Cape Ann. And we have 6 action groups. And our group is a community building and education group. And so we received a small grant last year from the Mass Clean Energy Center to work on energy efficiency project. And it was to help low-income households with their energy burden. So our plan of action was to help them lower their energy costs and work towards electrify everything and help them access renewable energy. And our decisions were based on the community needs, the needs of lower income households. So in Gloucester, 59% of our greenhouse gas emissions are from the building sector. And there's 1,100 apartment buildings in Gloucester's downtown area, which is where the environmental, the EJ zone is. So, and there's about 1,800 in the city. So we thought that would be a good place to start. And there's smaller ones. Most of them are smaller, like 2 families, 3 families, 4 families. And the other reason we came up, we noticed is that the energy burden of low income households is 3 times greater than higher income households. So what our plan is to increase the number of energy assessments and weatherizations and energy upgrades for income eligible households and encourage them to sign up for community solar and explore what electrify everything means for income eligible households. And I'm going to let Susan go from here.
We had a few obstacles or barriers, the plant or bumps in the road. And I'd like to explain them to you because it really impacts the way we are looking at what we're doing now. It was hard for us to identify and connect with income eligible residents for 2 reasons. One, our plan for joint programming with local agencies that dealt with this population just didn't pan out because of COVID. So between COVID and their confidentiality plans, we had a tough time reaching out to a lot of income eligible people. Promoting solar, community solar, was a bust for us for the most part, and I'm hoping to learn more about how to do it more effectively later on in this program. And we found that it was difficult because of the complexity of understanding the billing and the application. For example, we tabled at senior centers, and just applying on a computer was beyond what most people could do, and we couldn't do it for them on our computers. There was also a distrust based on the bait and switch electric suppliers of yesterday, and it's still lingering, and we still can't get over that this is not a bait and switch operation. But a real bump in the road for us was just our plain and simple relationships with the CAP agencies. I hope you all know, I'm just going to repeat it a little bit for those that don't know. Income eligible residents cannot follow the same path to receive the goodies from MassSave's funding, like you and I can. When someone calls for home energy assessment, an automated voice asks for a lot of information, one of which is your income. If you're income eligible, your phone call is immediately diverted to a CAP agency. CAP agencies are the ones that are given the money from MassSave, from National Grid, from our electric bill to provide services for income eligible people. There are 23 independent community action programs in Massachusetts. Most are independent, nonprofit, anti-poverty age groups. Their energy programs within these groups depend to a large degree on goals set and funds allocated by National Grid. And we all know that National Grid is an international gas company. So that presented a problem for us. And I'll get to that a little bit later. Initially, our CAP agency did not welcome us with open arms. They couldn't understand our interest in increasing referrals to their energy efficient program. They questioned why our services would be needed since they had a sufficient outreach in place for years and years. And it's true, our CAP agency has done wonderful things for the city of Gloucester for years. But we found some problems with that. Actually, we found a lot of problems with that. In working with some of the income eligible population, they really had strange relationships with weatherization and other things. So we found quite a few issues along those lines. The second thing, communication between us and our CAP agency was difficult. There was great confusion about who was eligible for what, how, and when. This was not made clear to us really for months after we started working on this project. However, I feel that our biggest bump in the road is having to rely on CAP agencies for funding for energy efficient upgrades for all income eligible households. Again, the CAP agencies receive much of their funding from National Grid, an international gas company. They supply the money generated from our surcharge on our electric bill and regulate what decarbonization actions CAP agencies allow. For example, you would expect, well, you wouldn't expect, but they don't allow any conversions to electric heat from gas. If any appliances have to be fixed, whether it's gas furnace or a stove, it all has to be gas for these low-income people. And as you saw in Lisa's presentation, that most of our income eligible people live in the center of Gloucester, and it's all gas. Everybody's served by gas in that area. So we have a large segment of our income eligible people, depending on a CAP agency, that do not convert to electric heating.
Okay, so back to me. We came up with a revised plan, and because of these barriers that we had, we modified the original plan, and we realized, like Karen said, the majority of low-income households are renters, and they don't have any control over their energy systems in their buildings. And they're also timid about rocking the boat with improvements on their property because they don't want the landlords to raise their rents. And so landlords hold all the control. So we try to focus more intently on landlords. And unlike Acton, Gloucester has a lot of local landlords. Just to let you know about apartment decarbonization through the CAP agencies, if they either can do it unit by unit. So if you have a building with less than 50% of the renters being income eligible, then they'll only do an individual income eligible person's unit. But if you have 50% or more of the renters being income eligible, then they'll do the whole building for you. So we were trying to identify buildings that had 50% or more income eligible renters. And we found buildings, and we connected with the landlords, and we explained about the benefits that their buildings would receive from the local CAP agency and Mass Save, and also Mass Lean, and they do multi-units with 5 or more units. And then we also explained our role as Cape Ann Climate volunteers. We listened to their questions, and we answered their questions. So anyways, we suggested 2 roles that we could play as volunteers. We could either be coaches and provide information and answer questions the landlords, and the landlords would take the lead through the process, or we could act as an advocate agent for the landlords, and most selected us to be advocate agents for them to get work done on their energy work done on their property. So this is what we do with the new plan. We interact with the tenants and landlords and explain the process and benefits. We secure needed signatures for documents and schedule appointments. And there can be delays getting signatures. And one thing that's not very convenient is the CAP agencies require that all the units in one in each building be assessed on the same day, and that each unit needs to have a renter present during the assessment. So you have to make sure that that whole building has someone there from each apartment during the assessment. So that can take a while. We're present during the energy assessment for each unit, and this gives us insight as to like the type of assessment that's being completed. And we'll ask questions for the landlord to the assessor. And also we're there to like listen to the tenant and provide information to them about weatherization and other things, about you know, maybe long-term goals towards electrifying everything. And you know, a lot of people were talking about their cars and gas this year, and that was a big energy burden for them. And then another thing we do is review the work permit and options with the landlords and tenants. And this is important because the CAP agencies don't give a written report on their energy assessment, and they only give a work order that that says what the upgrades are that the CAP agencies agree to complete. And so there's no information about other immediate or long range energy efficiency needs that they get from the inspection. And then we monitor the implementation of the new work that's going to happen, and we'll also help educate tenants as needed if they get heat pumps on how to operate them efficiently. And so currently, this has been a year-long grant and project. We've been working with 8 landlords, but we're getting them more as we go along. And there are 11 multi-units and 1 single-family home that's being rented. And back to Susan.
We're working for another year on a slightly different project and a slightly different orientation. We're going to keep the work that Lisa just described, one-to-one consultation or advocacy work with landlords, but we're also adding the expertise of a consulting service, sustainable real estate consulting service, to help us with providing information and marketing decarbonization to all local landlords. And with that broad outreach, we hope to get more of these income eligible homes that we can work one-to-one with. We're also going to be working to get EV chargers based on feedback from renters that they needed help with their energy transportation. We'll be expanding our heat pump coaching training to be able to support landlords as they begin to explore electrical heating options for multi-unit buildings. And we'll continue to advocate for low-income households to receive adequate funds for decarbonization. Amen.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, both Lisa and Susan. Really, that was a great presentation. I think what we're going to do, please hold on to your questions, but I think what we'll do is we're going to hear from our final speaker, and then we'll have a more general opportunity for some questions and conversation. So thank you again, both Lisa and Susan. And I'm going to turn it over now to Jocelyn Singh, who is here with us from SunWealth Power. So Jocelyn.
I wanted to quickly introduce myself. My name is Jasleen. I'm here with my colleague Sean from SunWealth Power, and we are a Massachusetts-based community solar provider, particularly specializing in low-income community solar. So coming to you here speaking as a resource for all of you leaders in the sustainability space about how maybe we can best find these populations and educate them and link them up with a great savings opportunity. So more to come on that, but Nathan, feel free to go on to the next slide. So I've been told that most of you folks are familiar with community solar here, but just to do kind of like a quick brief overview, it's a subscription way into buying into the clean energy economy. So you don't need to own your own roof. You subscribe, or a customer subscribes to receive a portion of energy generated at a solar array based in the community. And it doesn't have to be in that town, as long as the array is in a certain utility territory. A customer is able to subscribe to that project, and they receive the 25% discount that our company provides on that production. So there's no enrollment fees, no upfront cost, no cancellation fees, just really making community solar accessible. And that's what that's all about. So next, just a little brief bit about us at Sunwealth. We are a clean energy impact investment firm specializing in low-income community solar. And we have a great product. I've worked on this team for the last 2 years, finding meaningful partnerships in towns to find these populations, to make sure that we're democratizing solar and having everyone participate in the clean energy economy fairly, and reaping the benefits of that as well, justly. And we've been recognized by the Department of Energy for that work, particularly in providing an above average savings product to these folks. Community solar market rate savings are typically lean within 5 to 10%, but we know that there's a lot of money to be saved with this technology in a lot of different communities. And so you can see some numbers there of $58,000 in energy savings just last year between that amount of customers. Our home and bread and butter is Massachusetts, but we're expanding, but really have our roots here in Massachusetts and looking to grow that out through connected folks like you all tonight, and more to come there as well. But just wanted to give that little brief overview. But the crux of our program is that folks receive 25% savings on all clean energy received. So not all energy holistically, but I'll break that down on the billing section shortly. But again, just trying to decrease any barriers to entry here for customers so that they can be involved in a clean energy economy. So no enrollment fees, no upfront fees, making sure people realize it's not on their own roof, no credit check for low-income customers. We have a 1-year contract, and it renews up for 20 years, but there's no cancellation fees as mentioned before. And then again, to make this as accessible as possible, our program is stackable with other energy savings opportunities when you're thinking of fuel assistance, LIHEAP, community choice programs, Mass Save, all of that. We want to make sure that we're working with everyone to save folks the most that they can. So just a brief spotlight. This is actually our first community solar project and our smallest, that's based in Acton, which is on a roof canopy or a parking canopy in Congregation Beth Elohim. And this was a great joint partnership effort. 621 Energy, which is the installer, Wayland Housing Authority, we worked with closely, as Ellen mentioned prior, in terms of finding residents that would be eligible for our program, also with the town through All in Energy, just really hitting home the point of these are local projects with local jobs for local customers and cleaning local air with local savings. So that is community solar at its core. But speaking to kind of the nitty-grittiest part of community solar and kind of coming up with the educational components on how to explain community solar billing. Ellen had made the point previously about at some point there might be a consolidated billing structure in Massachusetts. Until that happens, this is kind of what community solar looks like. So for the sake of numbers, let's say a subscriber has a monthly bill of around $100. We aim to offset a customer's annual energy burden by 80%. So if the customer received $80 worth of solar credits that month, it comes on someone's utility bill as an on-bill credit. it will reduce that customer's utility bill down to $20. And instead of paying for all $80 worth of solar credits to us, that is where the 25% discount kicks in. So that's when they'll receive a monthly invoice from Sunwealth on the first business day of every month for that 25% discount credits, in this case $60, for a monthly net savings of $20. And so you can, as you can see, on an annual basis, that's a good chunk of change and impactful savings, and obviously is flexible to different customers with their varying amounts of energy burdens. But that at its core is what community solar looks like. It's a 20% overall electricity savings. And the distinction is that the 25% discount is only applied to the clean energy credits that reduce one's bills. So just to kind of show what that looks like, on the next page, on the left-hand side, I have a sample bill of a customer. And I know it's kind of small, but those small numbers, those charges add up to $100 bill. The negative 80 is the credit, the Sunwealth credit that shows up on someone's bill, reducing it down to that $20 in the total amount due in that big green section. And so that's what a customer is going to see, which is amazing. And then that invoice on the right-hand side is what they receive from Sunwealth, their community solar provider, on the first business day of the month for the community solar credits with the 25% discount applied. So the things to know about this is, yes, it's a two-bill system, but we have a plethora of educational materials to walk customers through that. The credits transfer directly onto one's utilities bill, so it's not necessarily a change in supplier of that sort. And then there is an automatic payment processing. We send this invoice, as I mentioned, on the first business day of the month, give folks 4 to 5 business days for review, for notification, and then we automatically process payment on a customer's provided ACH or credit card. So who qualifies for Sunwealth Community Solar? We originally started in Eversource East territory, but we are growing into National Grid territory as well. And again, these folks have to fall into our income eligible parameters. So either they live in an environmental justice zone determined by the census tract, or they are on the R2 or R4 income eligible discount rate by the utility, which Sunwealth also offers assistance in applying for.
I'm just going to jump in there, Jocelyn, to say one thing, which is, so we did work with the Wayland Housing Authority, introduced Sunwealth there, got 20 or so people to subscribe. A bunch of the people living at the Housing Authority were not on the R2 rate, which is the low income rate. So not only did Sunwealth help them sign up for community solar, but they helped them get on the R2 rate, which in addition to that 25% savings, gave them additional savings. So they are willing to and happy to coach individuals to make sure that they get on the R2 rate, because that's sort of the ticket to get into the program if you're not in a kind of a pre-approved zone. I think everyone in a housing authority would automatically qualify because they meet the HUD restrictions. But just to say they offer that support, and that turned out to be very helpful.
So that was a great segue into how our structure with partnerships work. We often love to work with municipalities because it is a great indication to these vulnerable and underserved populations that, you know, we are a credible provider that is trying to provide them the savings opportunity. And so with the city of Cambridge, we did an official mailer campaign reaching all of their customers that were on those R2 and R4 utility rates, letting them know of this additional opportunity to have savings. And likewise with Lexington. We also work with affordable housing groups because, as Ellen mentioned, those folks are automatically eligible for our program if they're in subsidized or public housing. And so housing authorities are great for that because, again, our target population is achieved and we're able to extend those savings in strides. We work with nonprofits a lot as well. Heading Home is an organization that is aiming to end homelessness, and we sit in a bunch of coaching conversations, financial coaching conversations with their clients as another educational resource and opportunity to reduce their energy burdens and bill burdens. And so our collaboration opportunities are not limited to what you see here, from tabling at assistance fairs, working with sustainability directors, mail campaigns, webinars, newsletters, special projects, really just wanting to tap into your beautiful brains and connections of how to find these populations that we have a great product to serve, and the best way in tips and recommendations to educate them, that we are here to help, and save money. The last thing I'll add is we do have a lot of projects coming up in the next year, and we have a quick turnaround. So from someone enrolling in our program, we just have to let the utility know that someone's deciding to come in once we have a project live, and it usually takes them just 4 to 6 weeks to register them in the system and for the credits to show up on their bills. So it's a great way. Again, no cancellation fee, none of that, for folks to just have easy access to realizing the benefits of solar and participating in the clean energy economy. So I would just look to you folks, again, if you have any questions, happy to answer them in the discussion period, but hoping to just engage members of your community, maybe be put in contact with someone that you think that this could be a great opportunity or resource for. My contact information is there, and I'm sure we'll share it across channels and whatnot, but that's all I got. Thanks, Nathan. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Jocelyn, thank you very much. That was very, very useful. And folks, we will be sharing all of these slide decks with all of you in kind of follow-up emails. So, okay, well, we did not have a chance to kind of have a more general conversation that would include questions both about what's going on in Cape Ann, but also to Sunwell. So this is a time for some Q&A and questions raised, and then we are going to go into some sharing from each of you in your communities, just in a sentence or two, what you've been doing to support kind of lower income residents. Okay, I see that Susan has a hand up. Susan, were you going to ask a question?
Yes, I was. This is for Jocelyn. Are you going to open up any farms for the National Grid utilities?
Yes, we are. We are determining where exactly that will be. So I can be sure to connect with you on that later on. But yes, we're expanding into that territory.
Okay, because we can sign up your whole farm, I'm sure. Thank you. Thank
Perfect.
you.
Looking forward to it.
Okay, it looks like Lisa's got a question, and then Karen.
Yes. My question is, how did you get people to sign up who were not very good with technology?
Sure. So that's where kind of in-person events have been helpful for us, especially in those groups where we know everyone is eligible. So putting ourselves at like energy assistance fairs or affordable housing groups and connecting with the housing authorities in that way. We have like a sign-up sheet, and we're able to tell folks and pick apart their bills and help them see where they could see the savings on their bills. And so that has been helpful, just getting our name out in the community, but still trying to learn best practices there. So all ears.
Okay, same here. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I will say we did do this event at the Housing Authority, and we got a pretty good turnout, and a lot of those people who were there signed up because they could, and then some people you followed up with that were confused. But I think, Lisa, that helped, and it helped when, the head of the Housing Authority encouraged everyone to attend, and he was there too. So it was like, okay, that solved the trust problem, right? That was that they trust Brian. So that helped. And it is unfortunately complicated with this double bill, right? You get one new bill. That's what people were worried. I got another bill. Why do I need another bill? So you had to kind of show them both.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Karen.
So first of all, both of these presentations were amazing. It's so cool to hear about what's happening in Cape Ann with the landlords and to hear about community solar. I'm just wondering, Jocelyn, with the community solar, I mean, are you finding it hard to find places to generate the community solar? Like in Acton, the town is trying to do a community solar on a brownfields area, and they're just getting delay after delay after delay, mostly from the state. So I mean, is it hard to find where the energy is coming from?
So I will say there's a huge popularity in the space given the IRA and certain policy pushes. So there is a little bit of delay in construction, but that's just because there is such an incentive and a push and demand for these projects now. And we have a very experienced development team that is very fluent in bringing these projects to fruition. So we have a long pipeline, and I know that we're not in short company there of community solar projects and providers that are expected to have projects come online this year. So I would say, no, we have some friends in the utility space that we are able to get what we want as well.
You mentioned the example of Congregation Beth Elohim. So like if nonprofits in Acton are, houses of worship are putting up solar panels, I mean, should they talk to you and say, hey, we have excess energy? I mean, do you take little projects like that too?
Sure. Can you clarify, would they be like a host, a potential host, or a customer?
Like they might be a potential host.
Oh, okay. Well, if it is a smaller project, I'd be happy to put them in touch with our development team. And if we were not the best fit, we have a wealth of a network that we could connect them to. So happy to be a resource there.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, so Susan.
All right, I'm sorry to ask all these questions, but people in Cape Ann are really reluctant to give up green spaces to put solar. You've probably heard that argument before. And we would be interested in looking at rooftops. And do you like rent roofs? Do you work with large buildings to rent their roofs and develop solar farms off of that?
Yeah, actually, our preference is to use dead real estate, which is, rooftops. And so we always try to make that work first. And usually our deal is structured in one of two ways. The first being the host receives some of the benefit of the energy that's being produced on their own roof, or two, we give them a lease payment for the space that our solar array occupies. So absolutely, yeah.
And how much space do you need? I mean, how many square feet of rooftops are we talking about here? I bet it's, we're wondering if we have enough. We have huge buildings, but I don't know if everybody would agree, but just, I mean, how much space do you need? What's the minimum you would work on?
Sure. So it would have to, there's not an exact spectrum, and I would probably help put you in touch with our project development team. But we do tend to do more commercial size projects, smaller end as well. And I can speak to solar capacity, but maybe not exact square footage. So I will get back to you on that or put you in touch with one of our project development partners.
Thanks.
Yeah, so again, my thanks to all of the speakers who are sharing. It's really exciting to see the work that's being done in the communities to support people who don't have, who are not always able to afford these kind of changes. And it's great to see and hear about this, the discounts and the other offerings that are out there to support these people. So what I'd love to do now is just to kind of do a round robin, and whoever would like to share what's going on in your community, if you're doing anything, if you're thinking about doing something, that would be really great to hear. So I'm not going to call on you. I'll just, anybody who'd like to. And maybe before we get into, well, as part of that, I think, please raise your hand and then I'll call on you. So Ellen in Wayland.
And I promised Nathan I would model succinct summary. But we have done a substantial outreach campaign with the town and with Energize Wayland to promote energy audits which we started in October. Between October and say early January, we have generated over 175 individuals who have signed up for energy audits. We feel really good about that. And we have mock-ups, and Kat deserves a lot of credit, mock-ups on social media, letters from town, lots of stuff we're willing to share. And we're doing our second push. So, and it does involve our Council on Aging is probably our biggest sort of equity push on that one.
Great, thank you. Ricky. Lexington.
Yeah. Hi. So what we did in Lexington was the main push we've done so far for reaching our affordable housing low income community was our sustainability director and a group of us working with also LexHab, which owns a lot of our affordable housing in town. We set up a workshop. And what was kind of interesting, which I was thinking about when Karen was talking, is our LexHab community got a grant to give sort of holiday gift bags to people that had gift cards in it and all kinds of useful things. So they came. So, there was something for them to receive. And so they came and learned about 4 different ways to save money on their bill. One of them was Sunwealth, which you've heard about, reduced rate through LIHEAP, making sure they were on our community aggregation, and I'm blanking on the 4th way. Well, making sure they had the low income heating rate. And people were extremely happy to get all of this information. So, I mean, there's more people to reach. And one of our hopes is we did receive a Mass Save education grant also. And we are going to be hiring someone for 10 to 15 hours a week for a year, or 15 to 20 hours. We're going to move the amount of hours around to do, and they will be a clean heat outreach specialist. So they'll be reaching out to low income first and then the rest of the community. So we're hoping to get some good traction with that program, with that new hire. And if
Great.
anybody knows somebody looking for a job, let me know.
Great, thank you, Ricky. Okay, so other communities, would love to hear from some other communities. What's going on in your community? What are you doing? What are you thinking about?
I was really interested in attending tonight and hearing what you're all doing, and appreciate always ideas from other communities. One of the things that we've done in Melrose is we ran into a lot of the same barriers as some of other communities in terms of different tiers of service, different levels of service, wait times, etc., for home energy assessments, weatherization, depending on your income, and that was unacceptable to us. So I paired up with Malden, where over half of the population is income eligible, and that's under 60% of AMI. And we met in over 3 months constantly with ABCD, which is and Action Inc., which oversees all of the CAP agencies. And we came up with a solution in December that we just launched in January, which is that our home performance contractor, Homeworks Energy, that we issued an RFP for and selected, and as we've been working with since January, can now serve all of our income eligible renters, homeowners, residents, and it's seamless to the resident. So no longer do they take a different path depending on their income. And so it took a lot of work, and there's between Homeworks and the CAP agency to get their systems in place and to have it be to work out the kinks. But so far so good, and the work is happening.
That's great. Yeah, fantastic.
Wow. I just want to say, Martha, I know how hard that is. So, wow.
It was
Wow,
really
I'll
hard.
say that too. Wow. Good
And
going, Melissa.
I think part of it took, making a public statement at the November EEAC meeting that was all about low income, which is when the CAP agencies come and tell their story and provide all the data. And during the public comment section at the beginning of the meeting, Malden, my counterpart in Malden made a statement that it changed the rest of the 3-hour meeting, where they were reacting to Alex Pratt's from the Malden planning office's comments about how broken and their system is. And and it's just too complicated and too many steps and too many barriers to our most vulnerable residents being served. And so this is a pilot in Melrose. They're running similar pilots on the South Shore somewhere. I can't remember where, maybe Bedford, New Bedford. But in any case, we hope this is something that could be rolled out in other places.
Thank
Right.
you so much for doing that, Martha. It's really wonderful to hear.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, Susan Olshoff, looks like you've got a comment and we'd love to hear what you're up to.
Well, I just want to thank Martha for the work she's done because we're kind of following in her steps a little. We work with Homeworks as well, and they sent out this massive letter to everybody in 3 major cities in Western Mass, and they got 300 people call them who were income eligible. And typically they would just be told, we can't serve you, we're market rate. But they captured all of their contact information, and now we're able to send out a group email to all of those people. And we just sent it out a few days ago, and already we're getting quite a few responses from people. The letter said, you know, we understand you were interested and you haven't been served yet. How can we help you? And we're anticipating quite a bit of response. So thanks for the idea, Martha. And we hope it'll be really successful in bringing in a
One
lot of
more
people.
thing that we're doing with our CAP agency, ABCD, is that we're going to send a letter out to all of their customers who have oil heat about, you know, heating system conversions, and we're going to co-brand it between our, you know, the city and ABCD, and see how that goes. One of the things that we learned when we really dug into the data, because getting the data is half the challenge, and getting the CAP agencies and ABCD to tell us how many people, how many residents in our communities are eligible, how many are they serving. And what we found is that generally about, I think in Malden, it was about 1 in 4, 1 in 6 income eligible residents are being served by fuel assistance or the R2 discount. So there's a large population of folks who aren't being served. And they would say that a lot of those folks are living in affordable housing where they don't pay their utilities, or they're in you know, assisted living facilities, et cetera. But I don't think that's the 75. I don't think that's the bulk of them. I think that there are quite a few that that we're not reaching.
Okay.
That we at the city are going to try to reach, but the utilities and the CAP agencies aren't reaching those folks.
Yeah, Ellen, do you have a comment?
I mean, I think what's really interesting is to think about these HPC vendors. The CAP agencies are sort of overwhelmed, right? They're not very efficient. They're getting gobs more money from feds. They can't hire enough staff. And we have other vendors who probably can scale up more quickly. So if it's the DOE money is awful, very complicated, so it's hard for them to do that. But if it's utility money, it's easier for them to spend it. So I do think, Martha, it's like a super interesting idea about how to use that workforce that got developed and has some skills to sort of handle the demand that's happening in the income eligible space. The thing I would say about our experience, we're working with All in Energy, and we're mostly working with Nico as the vendor, is I weekly get, and I love this, I weekly get an email Excel sheet of all the customers that had a lead and all the customers that are in opportunities, that I can tell exactly where they are in the process. And that is like, we never get that from MassSave. Like, that's impossible to get, right? So now I can reach out and say, hey, we've got local coaches if you want to talk to somebody. So I'm really, and I just don't think the CAPs have that capability to give you that. But when these for-profit companies, you know, they're just a little better, or nonprofits too.
I mean,
I feel like that the data part, they're a little better on the data part.
yeah, two points there. In the defense of the CAP agencies, they are doing a million things, or
Agreed.
you know, and so the HPCs are doing one thing.
Yep.
In general. So yes, they are doing that one thing very well for the most part. The other thing is And I already forgot what I was going to say. so-
Martha, do you,
Okay.
excuse me, Martha, do you feel that all these regs are going to change pretty soon so the cap agencies do get more support, or we can go through
No,
homework?
nothing's going to happen soon or quickly. Right? It hasn't happened soon or quickly yet. I'm not sure that it's going, I mean, I would hope that it would. It has to under, this new administration. I would hope that new programs get developed, but
I mean, we'll see what happens. $146 million is coming to the state under IRA to send out energy efficiency money. So,
But if they send it all to the cap agencies, it's not going to do much good.
so we'll see. I think I think there's a pretty good awareness that cap agencies have been pretty overwhelmed, and they, in their defense, they have to follow a bunch of rules and they can't pay people enough. There's a bunch of issues that they really that aren't their fault.
And I don't know how many mass energized communities are in the CFP program, the Community First Partnership.
Oh yeah, Framingham is. Yeah.
But Melrose is one of, there are now 50 communities that are in this program. And we have access to the same information, but it's real time. It's in Salesforce.
Yep.
Is what the tool that All in Energy, who's the lead vendor for the CFP program, uses to manage.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. Are there other communities who'd like to share? I see Karen, I see your hand. But anybody else, Janet, Marissa, Debbie, anybody else who'd like to share what's going on in your community? And if not, that's fine.
Debbie, I know that Natick did some tabling events around trying to reach income eligible folks that with Framingham. I don't know if you have greater know any more about it.
I can't really speak to that. That was Jillian, our sustainability director's project. So I was not directly involved.
Okay, well, Karen, yeah, go ahead. Was somebody going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say something. I think people overestimate the ability for people of low income to attend to details like this. They're overwhelmed with their jobs. They're overwhelmed with their worries about paying the rent or paying their electric bill or paying the phone bill with their kids. This is just not on their top of their heads to think about, especially if cap agencies come in and pay their fuel, pay a large portion of their fuel, National Grid gives off 33% or something. It's just not on the top of their horizon. And we have to work on that because they need to support this. They need to understand it. It's to their benefit. I just think you overestimate their ability to work these things out for themselves.
Yeah.
That's been our experience.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, so I see Marissa's hand.
Hello, hi.
Hi.
I'm with Energize Franklin. So we are just getting started with our website. We've just sort of started it going live pretty recently. But I was really interested in hearing a lot of the different things people brought up and talked about tonight. As someone who is a renter rather than a homeowner, I did want to have components of our actions and our site that were accessible to people like me, and definitely in some of the research for that, I'm very aware that there were some of these, I think, I don't want to say obstacles, but yeah, there are definitely some challenges for accessing certain programs. And there's just a ton of stuff that I think I've learned about different programs a lot tonight, because I either haven't had to access them, but even just sort of from a general perspective, there's a lot of, I guess, distance sometimes it feels like between the rental market and the actions you can take as someone who owns a home, and some of those choices, I guess. Not that every little piece doesn't help, but yeah, I'm really interested in trying to see how we might be able to incorporate some of the stuff talked about here tonight into what we do with our site going forward.
Great. Well, welcome, Marissa, and good to have Franklin as part of this. And please reach out to you know, there's folks here who've been doing this a long time and who would be happy to help you out. So
Yeah, well, thank you. We appreciate it.
okay, well, we're getting towards the end of our time. So what I'd love to do just as we wrap up is think a little bit about the topics that you would like to you know, you feel compelled or would like to hear more about and have a more conversation about at future meetings. So we have about 5 or 10 minutes, and you know, last month we kind of generated this topic, so we want to be as responsive as possible. So are there compelling ideas, topics you'd like to talk about that you have, or issues that you're facing in your community that you think it'd be useful to use this forum to talk about with?
Yeah, so I've heard about volunteers doing a lot of work, and quite detailed work as well, like K-Band, for instance. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking like, wow, how many volunteers do you have, and how do you train them, and how do you recruit them? And I know that is a topic that always pops up. I don't know how to get speakers to speak to that, but that would be an interesting topic, I think, for.
Well, you have an expert, right? I'm looking at him right now, Stephen Brett up there from Mass Energize. He's the one that got us going on heat pump coaches. So, Stephen.
I think Kat's asking a somewhat different question, Susan, which is how you recruit the volunteers. If you bring the volunteers to Heat Smart Alliance, we can help train them, but we are not experts on recruiting. And so I think that's am I reading your question properly, or?
Yeah. How to recruit them, how to keep them happy, support them, make sure there's enough work for them. But the recruitment is, of course, the first step. Yes.
Those are good questions. And I think that we've just started. We've just gone through a training that Heat Smart Alliance has provided for us to use. And I think all those things are going to become, how do you keep them happy, and how do you keep them up on things? It's going to be a big question. So if anybody's working on that, let me know, because I'd be glad to join in and see how we can do that, because it's an essential service, at least in our community.
Great, good, yeah. Or other topics that folks would love to, yeah, Susan.
Along that same line as volunteers, last year we tried to get some summer interns, and we waited too long. And by the time we reached out, the students at the colleges were already booked. So just a heads up to keep in mind that if you're looking for someone in the summer to help out, in the summers when we do a lot of tabling, and you know, we can use people to knock on doors and stuff. It's not too soon to find out what the colleges are in your area and how to reach out to potential summer interns.
All right. Well, thank you all. It's really, it's always inspiring to hear what's going on, and we are always interested in learning how we can be better support you in doing what you're doing. So thank you all very much. I will be sending out in the next week or so, I'll be sending out the recording of this presentation. I'll be sending out the slides. There's lots of resources that got shared. We'll be sending out those resources, so please look for them. Feel free to share them. We always love to hear from you, so feel free to write to us asking questions or for other ideas for resources. We'll do our best to support you in that way. But thank you for doing what you're doing.